Welcome to the Grand Theft World podcast, hosted and sponsored by the members of Tragedy and Hope and the Grand Theft World community over here. All right, so wrapping up this year in 2024, we've got a lot of pieces of news that have happened the past week. It definitely wasn't a slow news week. They just stopped making up the news, and you got to see through the veil of without all the propaganda. You get to see what the news actually kind of looks like without artificial manipulation. You got people being set on fire. You got people being stabbed over $2 tips. There's a couple that's been arrested and sentenced to 100 years for pimping out their special needs adopted kids. All these types of things that are probably usually happening all the time and never make it onto our radar because we have Russia, or these other type of globalist machinations unfolding. This past week, there was a good speech by Patrick Bet-David over at the TPUSA gathering, and it was Obama's worst day ever. And I was, it's a provocative kind of title. So I checked out the speech and I found it to be pretty insightful. I also liked where he was leaning and going as far as unifying people, getting people back on the same page and looking at who are the actual opposition to freedom that we need to stay focused against. This past week, we also learned that President Biden, during his presidency, he spent an amazing amount of time on vacation. 570 days out of his presidency, 40% of his total presidency was spent on vacation. Because he was doing so good, he was smoothing it, and he deserved a break today, as they used to say over there at the McDonald's. Jimmy Carter passed away earlier today. He's celebrating his centennial, and he's celebrating it by leaving the crazy game called Earth. We're going to take a look at how he rose to power tonight, because when you find out the story of how he rose to power, you might look at his death very differently than they're going to show you on the TV. Trump looks to end wokeness. That's something he talked about this past week. Elon and Vivek have gone to war with MAGA over the H-1B visa scandal, thus the name of tonight's episode, Alien Invasion War. It's not about the lights over New Jersey. It's about the lights flashing before the MAGA crew even takes the White House. We have two plane crashes. One was accidental. You had a bird fly into South Korean Airlines, and it didn't get its landing gear down. The other one was Putin apologized. Let's put it that way. But he shot down a passenger plane from Azerbaijan this past week. We had a woman set on fire. She was sleeping in the subway. An undocumented immigrant from Guatemala set her on fire and then stood there and watched her burn. We had another man set on fire this past week in Penn Station. But like I said, these are probably normal news weeks. You just don't get to hear about this stuff because there's too much propaganda flying around. I think that's about it. So we're going to go and dig into those stories and much, much more, because there's a whole bunch of nuance. There's updates on the crazy Luigi CEO assassination. We have a look at the firearms and that were used in that assassination from Brandon Herrera in the show card tonight. So we have a really exciting show, but let's go first to Luke Rudowski from wearechange.org and thebestpoliticalshirts.com. Let's get his report from earlier today, and he'll start wrapping this package that we call 2024.
Well, I think the AI perfectly represented 2024 here.
Never stop, I'll get it if I want it. Gotta make to myself a promise.
Well, it's been a hell of a year. It's been absolutely a wild and crazy ride. 2025 will be a little bit crazier, but I think it's important to look back on this year, particularly with the most censored news stories of 2024 that we're going to be going over in this particular video. And without further ado, the 10th most censored story of this year, in my opinion, is how the FBI lied through their teeth about the crime statistics, and they were, of course, very
wrong.
That is
wrong. And he did the wrong thing. Wrong.
That is absolutely
wrong.
Proved over and over again.
Wrong.
Deliberately wrong, as of course, if you remember earlier this year, the new data came forward with the corporate media cheering it, along with fellow Democrats and liberals all over the place, saying, look, violent crime is down. Look how well we're doing. The lawlessness that Donald Trump keeps talking about is just wrong. As the next president-to-be was even fact-checked by the corporate media in real time about these crime statistics, which He was actually right about the whole time, as we later found out that the Federal Bureau of Investigations was fudging the data, lying to the American people for political brownie points like they usually routinely do. As a lot of people were kind of left asking the questions, why did the FBI lie about crime statistics? As that's usually what the agency does, as fact checkers had a heyday correcting Donald Trump, who was telling the truth all along. As a lot of politicians are now asking for more transparency about this data reveal that showed how the FBI failed to report accurate data to the American people, as there wasn't a national violent crime drop. Quite the opposite of that happened, as the establishment was telling you not to believe the information right in front of your own eyes and ears. As a lot of people were saying, hey, yeah, the world's becoming a lot more violent, and it's not just highlighted on social media, it's highlighted in my everyday life. As of course, that's not the only lie that the corporate media was telling us, as of course at number 9, we have them telling us that the presidential race was very close when everyone knew it wasn't.
New poll with Ipsos has Kamala Harris right now back in front, a 4-point lead, 51-47 in the matchup with former President Trump. That is up from about 2 points nationally.
Yeah, as those numbers were absolutely bunk and totally made up. As we heard article after article saying, look, Kamala's gonna win. Kamala's in the lead. Democrats are panicking for no reason. The race is too close to call. There's no way Trump could win this. This is closer than anyone thought it would be. It's too close to call. It is a dead heat. And everyone knew, especially when they were looking at the internal poll numbers, that, Harris actually was never leading Donald Trump in the polls. And DNC officials knew weeks, days, and even on the eve of the election that they were losing and had no absolute chance of actually winning this election. As the top aide at the Kamala Harris campaign said, we were told definitely that she had a shot at winning. It wasn't even a shot. But why did they lie? Why were the polls kind of manipulated here to keep us on the edge of our seats? As now, Donald Trump is actually suing a major pollster in this country in order to try to get answers from that. As now people are saying, how dare he attack democratic institutions that a lot of people believe were lying to them. As of course another thing that you're lied about, which leads us to number 8 in the top 10 censored news stories of 2024, is the global fertility collapse that is happening right now. As we've been told repeatedly, there's too many people in this world. We got to get rid of them somehow. When in all actuality, the exact opposite of that is true.
We are going to die.
Yeah, eventually, as of course the population of world's birth is going down dramatically, more specifically in the Western world, which is signaling larger troubles for the United States, Europe, countries like Japan, and other first world nations that highlight a 3.0 decline in the last 58 years. Something is going on here. As you look at these projected collapses and the populations that will result from it, man, does it highlight some larger, bigger problems for countries that will literally no longer exist in the future. As many people have declared that we are now living in the age of depopulation, as this plummeting has actually accelerated within the last 2 years, as 45% of women now are expected to be childless between the ages of 25 and 44 in the year of 2030. Testosterone levels down 60%, sperm count down over 50% in between now and the 1970s, as this is one of the most biggest important stories that has been censored from you, the American people, that needs to be highlighted, reminded, and of course kept up with, as this is something that could end all of civilization, as the problem is only being made worse and there's no real solution ahead of us. As of course number 7 leads us to one of the men responsible for a lot of this, in my opinion, and that of course is Bill Gates, who has previously announced that there's way too many people in this world and there needs to be medical procedures in order to stop them from procreating, growing, and expanding. As you know, he's also actively blocking out the sun and using entire countries like laboratories.
And it's kind of a laboratory to try things that then, once you prove them out in India, you can take to other places. And so our biggest non-U.S. office for the foundation is in India.
Yeah, India, that's actually dealing with the population growth, as Bill Gates there has hijacked not only the medical institutions in that particular country, but also, of course, the corporate media and a lot of the politicians there that bow down to him and all of the money that he brings into that particular country in order to, run his larger scientific experiments on unsuspecting Indian citizens. As using an entire country as your kind of laboratory, as you believe that there's way too many people in this world, is a little sus there. As this is also the same man that is a part of other ventures that are spraying dust into the atmosphere in order to block out the sun. You heard that correctly. As scientists this year in April of 2024 shot salt aerosol particles into the air over San Francisco Bay in an attempt to block out the sun. As the corporate media somehow cheerleaded this, CNBC now, another institution hijacked by the influence and big money of Bill Gates, that says Bill Gates and his funded chemical cloud could help stop global warming. Yeah, just give Bill Gates all of your money and allow him to block out the sun, and that will make the weather gooder. Yeah, sure. As this project was something that we were warning about happening for a number of years now, but was actually implemented this year and has already been carried out and looks like it will continue to be carried out for the foreseeable future. As no one voted for this, as Bill Gates wants to spray more millions of tons of dust into the stratosphere, as why the hell not allow this billionaire to do whatever he wants in this world, because that's the type of society we live in. As of course, this brings me to the 6th most censored news story of 2024, and it's another billionaire being able to do whatever he wants, and that of course is P. Diddy, that as we found out ever since the 90s was up to some really horrible, awful things, as him and other top echelons of the entertainment industry have been exposed and are being accused of some of the worst horrors that could be committed on human beings.
Yeah, now watch me Diddy pop up out of here. Now watch me Diddy pop up out of here.
Yep, that Diddy's popping something else tonight as he's in jail. Luckily, as we found out that some of the most powerful people in this world, other billionaires, celebrities, media moguls, tech experts, were all getting down with baby oil, drugs, honey packets, and allegedly small underage children in what the media is missing here, as this was a larger extortion operation that secretly filmed a lot of very powerful people doing a lot of really awful stuff, which of course later was used as a form of extortion. And this is why, according to a lot of people, we saw a lot of P. Diddy's friends that were at his party all kind of come out in unison and endorse Kamala Harris for the presidency in 2024. As a lot of people, including individuals like Usher, who said that they wouldn't get politically involved, got politically involved. As today we're getting reports that Diddy's having a meltdown in jail, as a lot of people here are demanding justice surrounding this particular case, as a lot of what's happening here has a lot of very similar elements to the Jeffrey Epstein saga. As this leads us to the 5th most censored story of 2024, and that of course is the end of DEI. As the racist, divisive, woke, liberal policy that of course discriminated against people because of the way that they were born is being ended, not just in the private sector, but also in the public sector as well, as many top corporations, universities, even official government branches are moving away from this ever so divisive, cancerous rhetoric that denies people opportunities and propels people who are not fit to have them based on their identity of how they were born. As a lot of people are saying, good riddance, as this hasn't really helped anyone. It has screwed over a lot of people, as even major corporations have entirely eliminated it from their website, their programs, and their businesses, as Ford, Coors, Lowe's, Boeing, Toyota, Walmart, Carpenter, Craftsman, John Deere, Jack Daniels, Tractor Supply, Harley Davidson, American Airlines, and many others are saying, hey, yeah, that racism doesn't fly here, as now at least 22 states have gotten rid of their DEI measures, as a lot of people are not just rolling them back, but are banning them, as these policies have directly discriminated against individuals, as we have now seen these types of hiring practices under these specific programs that denied people the ability to work. As according to the Washington Post, the top 100 S&P corporations added more than 300,000 jobs in 2020, where 94% of them went to people of color and only 6% of them went to white people that make up the majority of people in this country. As that right there is actual racism. And good riddance to it, as of course it was founded and pushed forward by a lot of very woke corporations like BlackRock, State Street, as the Pope was also involved here. The Rothschilds were involved here with their larger revisioning of capitalism, which essentially was just another way of saying socialism. As now we're going to go to the fourth most censored story, and that of course was the disclosure that the Germans actually found out who blew up their Nord Stream pipeline.
The Nord Stream pipelines were mysteriously blown up in September 2022, yet the perpetrator of the attack remained a mystery as no one claimed responsibility.
Not that big of mystery, as of course the U.S. corporate media was specifically telling us that it was the Russians that self-sabotaged their own pipelines, their own resources, their own ability to galvanize funds for themselves, as a lot of people were saying that doesn't add up, and then we were called conspiracy theorists and individuals who allegedly colluded with Russia. As the Germans launched their own investigation into this larger kind of blowing up of an important piece of energy infrastructure that led to one of the most catastrophic natural disasters in human history, as the Germans came out in their investigation saying that it was the Ukrainians that blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. As at first, Volodymyr Zelensky denied these allegations to the Wall Street Journal, and then later came on and said, yeah, we devised this plan, I tried to stop it, then I was too late, then it actually happened, as the Germans now are reporting that the culprit is actually hiding out in Poland and Ukraine, who actually committed this very brazen action that has very negatively affected the energy infrastructure of Germany and a lot of other European countries. As Politico today is reporting that Germany is zeroing in on Ukrainian suspect in the Nord Stream pipeline, as the Ukrainians also just very recently announced that, hey, we're going to be shutting off all gas going through Ukraine on January 1st to all of Europe during the middle of winter, because why not? As there still is an ongoing arrest warrant to what I think is one of the biggest stories of this year that absolutely deserves a lot more attention, as of course in other related intel agency news. The third most censored story of 2024, in my opinion, is the U.S., Israeli, and Turkish government overthrow of the Syrian government that now is in the hands of, quote, moderate rebels.
Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar!
Yep, as of course, it doesn't fare well for the Kurds, the Christians, and other religious minorities in that country. They're going to be dealing with a very difficult situation, as Syria is now a failed state, as the United States has been intervening in that country for a very long time. There was deliberate attempts under Barack Obama's administration in order to bomb and overthrow the Syrian leadership, but it looks like the U.S. intel agencies that couldn't do this under Donald Trump. Julian Assange actually came out and specifically said that the United States wanted to overthrow Syria under the Trump administration. Trump said no, and as soon as Donald Trump won this year's political election, it looks like the intel agencies just went forward with their plan that they knew that they couldn't get done through the future administration. As now Syria is dealing with a very difficult situation, as Syrian rebels, without any major kind of resistance, were able to just walk in to the country and overtake it completely themselves. As the Israelis were able to get a lot of land and territory in the deal, the Turks are able to get their war against the Kurds, as the rest of the world will be probably dealing with more global moderate rebelism, as well as a potential larger refugee crisis that probably will be happening because of it. As of course, this was all done under the watchful eye of the Biden family, which leads us to the second most censored story of 2024, and that is the Biden crime family that, of course, was able to fully get away with it with the official pardons for Hunter Biden.
The president of Angola was forced to direct Joe Biden whilst walking and then seemed to take his arm to stop him from tripping up a step.
Yep, as finally the skeletons out of Hunter Biden's closet partly came out without any kind of larger suppression like we saw in the last election. That really did make a dent in the results there. But this year, officially, Hunter Biden was facing some very serious crimes, charges, and court proceedings that now he got a jail out of free card as he was officially pardoned for behavior for up to 8+ years. As Joe Biden was also caught with classified documents inside of his own personal home that he was now never held responsible for. He's off just given incredible business deals to a lot of foreign countries that, of course, him and his family have ties to. There's a bunch of foreign aid just making its way to a lot of despotic, corrupted places all around the world that probably will be returning the favor to Joe Biden. And as he is a man of the special interest groups. He is the man of the lobbyist that even Barack Obama warned about publicly, saying that he has been hijacked, he has been captured by the special interest groups, and those special interest groups definitely cashed in on his administration. The people who paid for it was, of course, you, and it looks like Joe Biden just gives no longer any F, not just with that pardon, but with his largely classless behavior, as he has described MAGA as the #1 threat to freedom and democracy in this country, which brings us to the #1 most censored news stories of 2024, and that is that we still don't have any answers about the attempted assassination of Donald J. Trump.
Take a look what happened.
As we came this close towards this country no longer being a country. And what really happened here? Who was responsible? What was allowed to happen here? As of course we had security failure after security failure after security failure, as things were revealed to us that we had to extrapolate, that we had to put together, as the intel agencies were literally classifying and denying information to the general public, to still this point where we don't know what the hell was going on here. There's encrypted phones, there was multiple attempted assassinations, and this was truly the biggest story of 2024 that the corporate media really desperately wanted you to forget about, to the point where Facebook and Google were literally censoring the photos of this particular incident, as members of Congress took it upon themselves to investigate what actually was happening here. And guess what? They couldn't even find out what really happened, as the latest hearings have just devolved into screaming matches, as the director of the Secret Service resigned, and it looks like the new director really isn't even interested in finding out what happened here, as clearly this story does highlight a lot of circumstantial evidence that proves that it was probably the intel agencies that were after him. As of course, if this story happened to a Democrat or happened to Joe Biden, you could expect the exact opposite of media coverage like we saw with this particular story, as of course the corporate media, even after someone attempted to take the life of Donald Trump, still continued to run negative headlines about Donald Trump somehow, as this was the major galvanizing event that changed everything that we still do not have any official answers to. How did this happen? Why did this happen? Are you telling me it was all a large coincidence? I don't know about you, but I don't buy that. And if you don't buy that as well, share this video with your friends and family members, as of course we here strive to make the best, most important content for you as an independent media organization that is supported through your help and your direct assistance. This has been an absolutely crazy year for us, as we have a significant legal battle and financial issues that we're dealing with right now in the making of this video, and that's why we launched SaveLukeNow.com. We've been doing independent reporting for over 20 plus years. We are truly in not a very good situation. You guys could help us out. Instead of just asking for a handout, and sure, you could donate, we have a way for you guys to be able to donate directly to us. You could donate anonymously. You could sign up to LukeUnfiltered.com, which would be the best thing you could do. But we also have a bunch of products that you could get. We have limited edition hats. We only have a few of these left. We have signs. Once these signs are gone, once these hats are gone, we're not bringing them back.
All right, support Luke. He's a OG. He's been around as long as me or Corbett or, many other people. Of course, Alex Jones was there before any of us. Bill Cooper, Ed Griffin, Jordan Maxwell. There was OGs before the OGs of the internet era. We didn't have VHS tapes. We had internet type stuff. All right, Scott, welcome back. How you feeling?
Oh, thank you, man. I feel much better. It's so weird because, literally halfway through the show, I had to excuse myself in the middle of a segment. I lost my dinner, dude, and it was crazy. But I'm feeling great. Thank you. I mean, I have no explanation. It's the bad guys. It's like they must be blasting radio waves through my window here, like trying.
Your body just upgraded. That's all.
That's it. But yeah,
immune system upgrades are good.
Which is it's so weird that it happened like right in the middle of the show, dude. Like that's like unacceptable. That's like some chicken shit.
You had to parachute out mid-flight.
But we're back.
We landed safely. Colby and I had that last week. We did it. Doing it live is what it's all about. That's those autonomy skills. Lawrence, how was your Christmas?
That was very good. Very
Yeah,
relaxing. Good time.
How was the travel through Christmas?
I wasn't traveling for Christmas.
Oh, you didn't have to travel? That's sweet,
No.
dude.
Yes.
That's nice. That's awesome, dude. All right. Well, thank you guys for running the show the week that I was out, because you guys did an impeccable job. You held it down. You took on the challenge. You upped the ante with the Beavis and Butthead intro and all that good stuff. And so, welcome back. And it's good to be flying with you guys. And Colby, thanks for helping out last week. And Cody, thanks for helping out every week. And then Jerry, thanks for editing stuff. There's a whole bunch of people to thank. We could get into that, but we'll save the rest of the thank yous for the end of the show instead of the beginning of the show. Trump assassinations was something that Luke brought up that we still don't know about. We will find out a little bit tonight about a Trump attempted assassin, the guy from the golf course, that Ryan Ralph guy. Apparently the Secret Service missed all the shots that they took at him, which isn't surprising if he was 100 yards away, but since he was like 5 feet away, it's kind of a bigger deal. So we'll get Coleon Noir's take on that later tonight. We don't have time to get to the Trump assassin attempts yet because we got a whole bunch of other good stuff to do. Also, happy birthday to Tony Myers.
Oh, happy birthday, Tony.
Congratulations to James Cordner. He had a baby. Well, his wife had a baby tonight. So I got the play-by-play, and he hosts a Grand Theft World Town Hall. Probably, maybe, I don't know. There might be one this Tuesday on New Year's Eve. I doubt that he's going to be hosting it. If there is, I'll have to hold it down. My wife asked, what are we doing on New Year's Eve? Well, maybe we're having Town Hall. We'll see. We'll see. And before I forget to do it, because I always forget to plug my own stuff, but I have a service that I provide to individuals to help them embolden their value and utility to the marketplace, and I do it twice a year. We are about to do public advertising for the first time on Rumble and Facebook and all these places, so we're going to have a flood of interest. What I'd like is to help my own audience before we go to people I don't know and who don't know me. If you have thought about autonomy, you thought whatever, why don't you check it out? Why don't you take this primer course? You can find it on getautonomy.info. Take the free primer course and see what the options are, because we have changed pricing. We have added pricing plans. There's a whole bunch of things we've done to lower the barrier to entry so that you don't have to have the excuse of, oh, I don't have the money for that. That is a terrible thought to have racking around in your head when you're trying to get stuff done, when you're trying to make change, when you're trying to grow, when you're trying to make progress, when you're trying to make repairs. Oh, I don't know. Maybe I should get the generic thing. Having the money to do the things you want to do and do them right the first time is very important to your attitude and your way of engaging with problems in the world. And learning how to up your cash flow, up your value to the market is a permanent thing. The skills don't go away. They can't be taxed. They can't be confiscated. You can't leave home without them. They're between your ears. And you cannot buy skills and experience, but we do provide a dojo where such activities do go on. And if you invest time and participate, you can gain those skills and experience that almost no one else in the marketplace has these days. You can also learn sales from an ethical problem-solving angle, which will give you such a high value earning potential and a problem-solving skill set that'll make you indispensable everywhere you go. Now, since Scott and Lawrence are both graduates of Autonomy, we've been doing this for 6 years. There's a lot of graduates out there. Have you guys any encouragement to embolden and provide courage to those who need to up their game and consistently run into that barrier of, I don't have enough money for that? Because that's, like I said, it's like a mind. It's a terrible thing to waste the opportunity to outgrow that status quo.
I mean, I would just say that, you got to think of yourself as an investment, really. I mean, what the return that you get, okay. So, I mean, you'll get like little things to help you walk out the door of Autonomy to generate income directly, but also like, oh, I'm not going to but anyway, the skills themselves though, it's like how to conceptualize things that probably never even thought of. Like I learned things that I hadn't even considered before, like different strategies for making money, but then also the nuts and bolts of how to execute some of that stuff. And I was able to take some of that stuff right out and figure it out. And then for me personally, it was at a time where I was looking to add value to somebody, what's somebody else had going, like a little business venture someone else had going, and I basically was able to latch on and add value to that, and both sides were mutually benefited from that. And it got me just thinking in those terms, like just like, okay, so what can I add of value to this existing enterprise? So anyway, just the and then just the erasing the whole paycheck mentality out of my brain was so helpful, because again, at that time I just moved to Tennessee. I had my entire life I had been working a 9 to 5 ish, whatever, paycheck job. And I always looked around at all these businesses. Like every time you drive down the street, you see a business, and every single one of those businesses started with a person having an idea to start that business. And it was so frustrating to me that I couldn't bridge that gap or like make the leap from a paycheck job to like starting a business, right? And what happened is a lot of things happened in my life in such a way where I kind of inadvertently found myself working for myself. I was applying for jobs, doing what I had been doing before, which was drug and alcohol counseling. And while I was waiting to hear back, I put up a Facebook post in some local groups saying that I have a truck and some tools if anybody needs help. And then what happened is I just started doing this like side gig stuff while I was going through Autonomy. And I realized, oh my God, I have like a business, right? Like a viable like business opportunity here. And so it like coalesced all at the exact same time. And I was able to basically branch out and just have the courage to dive into that and make that a full-time thing and start my own like little handyman business, because all at the same time the programming of the safety net of having a paycheck job like that was being shipped away in real time. So it was a very magical thing that was happening for me, but it was pretty cool. So yeah, then I was involved with, and then the other thing I was talking about was like Ryan at T Lab. I was just starting to work with him, and we were trying to figure out what, where I fit in. We're like, hey, let's start a Substack. And I was like, yeah, so I'll manage that. We'll split it. You know what I mean? And it's like a win-win for everybody. And
So you got focused, then you got into action, and then things started happening for you.
Totally, man. And it was just a level up for me in so many different ways, and just really having the confidence and the vocabulary to even describe what was happening, with the entrepreneur stuff. And now I have multiple entrepreneur ventures, and so much of it, and the motivation and just the day-to-day grind and the attitude, the anti-fragility, like all that stuff was like really what I picked up through Autonomy. Like it really, a lot of those values of just like when something is asked of you, or if things get difficult, then you don't just meet those demands. You just like over deliver, over exceed, exceed expectations. Or someone has an expectation of you, you surpass that. And then you just operate with integrity over a period of time, and just all these things that are just like, I mean, these are all like core Autonomy values. And then when you're in that community of other like-minded people who are all trying to do the same thing, and you're trying to like, everyone is in that same, and I can't speak enough about the community itself, where it's like you're motivating each other. Everybody's trying to level up, themselves. And so it's like this, I don't want to say competition, but it's like you're really trying to like impress your colleagues, right? You know what I mean? So it's like this whole awesome thing.
Yeah, that's the encouragement part.
Yeah.
Right. And like, not when you say everyone's doing the same thing, it's like they're all breaking through learned helplessness and provisional self-esteem, and they're getting their active literacy skills going, but they're all applying the skills individually to their lives in a unique way.
Totally.
From that general set of skills of how to learn anything and overcome problems, make goals, and make yourself more useful to the marketplace. LD, what do you think?
Well, in answer to your question, I was just going to go with, if you're wondering how you're going to pay for something, work on changing your mindset, flipping around in your head, asking how do I pay for that thing, rather than dwelling on, not being able to pay for that thing, or, so that's just an example of, I'd say some of the mindset changes that you teach in Autonomy, and starting to ask yourself open-ended questions, I suppose, rather than dwelling on things that seem insurmountable.
Leah just told me, she's like, anyone who books a call this week will be eligible for the holiday special. Oh, that's another good reason. Before the rush of people and you get the best deal. And if you need payment plans and stuff, now's the time to negotiate when all my people aren't busy with the seeds and results of the fruits of those investments on Rumble and places like that. Now, what I do have to say, like for LD's point, let's say let's say I'm an auto parts, not an auto parts, like a repair place, right? And LD is one of my mechanics, and he comes to me and says, "Hey, I saw this YouTube video, and these guys are using dry ice and they're reconditioning cars." And I'm like, "That's a cool idea, because otherwise it's a lot of work." I'm like, "What's the nut on that?" And he's like, "Oh, it's the machine's 50 grand." Now, most business owners are like, "Oh, how do I pay for that? Do I, raise the prices on my services to my clients?" No, the answer always is, how do we pay for it? We do a marketing campaign. Marketing campaign pays for that thing. The thing pays for itself. That's how you ensure the whole thing. And most businesses see marketing as an expense, not the lifeblood of their business, because it's a function of getting your offer out there. Same thing if guys are like trying to date. It's a function of getting yourself out there and having offers, floating in the marketplace. If you're not getting out there and you're not placing offers into the marketplace, I doubt you have any success in that type of love life situation. Although the unjected community would be the place to find out actual answers on that type of thing.
You beat me to it.
See?
We're having lots of success, you guys. We got every day. We're getting reports of weddings.
I'm going to start sponsoring Unjected, because I bet there's a bunch of people over there that need to get some of these autonomy skills and get out of that. Man,
you know what? We're about to
got?
have ad integrations into the app itself. So we will be. That's something that's coming very soon. So hey, I'll hit you up as soon as we actually have that feature live. But we'll have ads within the app, which, it is what it is. But
ads become a lot more fun when you're an entrepreneur as well, because it's like your own lottery. It's like your own stock market. Only you have control over the numbers and all the stuff, all the variables. It's the only place you like. Betting on yourself is the only casino where you have control. Let me say it that way, right? And learning how to make your skill set into a money-making machine so you can live your life and then go to the market and do what you have to do every now and then to like keep the money flowing. But it's about getting your freedom back. Skills buy your time back and let you do what you want to do with your life, as opposed to being like, "Oh, I got to work 80 hours a week to cover the rent." You raise your skills, work less time, have more life, less frustration, because you're overcoming problems. And that problem solving modality that's the sales skill set in an ethical framework that is objectively moral and non-cringeworthy. So it's the only place on the planet where you can get this type of education. It's been proven out with almost 1,000 students. If you have questions, they are usually answered in the primer course. So if you go to getautonomy.info, scroll down, you'll see the picture. There's a button. Let's go. Take the primer course and then see what your options are, because your options are better now in the next 2 weeks than they are after I start putting a bunch of money into the marketplace to find the season 13 students. All right. With all that being said, let's go to some international news, and then we'll come back domestic, because we gotta hear about the peanut farmer. Not talking about Charles Schultz, talking about Jimmy Carter, and they're gonna give a whole bunch of hoopla. They're gonna have a presidential funeral. It's gonna be like a national holiday situation. I agree with Jimmy Carter on many points, but how he came into the market is just as like disingenuous as Harry S. Truman coming to be president. They went shopping for a guy, and they bought a guy, and then he became their guy in the White House. And if that's how it worked back then, and nothing's really changed, you can see what a threat someone like Trump coming to the marketplace is to those type of people who had a monopoly on the marketplace for like 60 or 70 years. Well, probably since the death of JFK, if not the end of World War II. So we're going to first go to Putin. He's going to apologize and say sorry. Then we're going to see how he shot down the commercial airliner with the Azerbaijani citizens. But an apology from Putin is a very rare thing, so I did want to get that on the record. And then we'll go to news of just hours ago, the death of Jimmy Carter.
The time now 2:13 on the East Coast, 11:13 on the West Coast. And I do want to take you back to this breaking news that we have been following international, of course, as Russian President Vladimir Putin has now apologized to his counterpart in Azerbaijan for what he called a, quote, tragic incident following the crash of an airliner over in Kazakhstan that killed 38 people, but he stopped short of acknowledging that Moscow was responsible. Putin's apology came as allegations mount that the plane had been shot down by Russian air defenses attempting to deflect a Ukrainian drone strike near Grozny, that is the regional capital there. An official Kremlin statement issued Saturday said that air defense systems were firing near Grozny airport as the airliner, quote, repeatedly attempted to land there on Wednesday. It did not explicitly say one of these hit the plane. The statement said Putin apologized to the Azerbaijan president, quote, for the fact that the tragic incident occurred in Russian airspace. The readout said Russia has launched a criminal probe into the incident, and the Azerbaijan state prosecutors have arrived in Grozny to take part. The Kremlin also said that, quote, relevant services from Russia, Azerbaijan, and Kazakhstan are jointly investigating the crash site near the city there in Kazakhstan where it did crash. Again, you can see the video on your screen. The plane was apparently flying from the Azerbaijan capital of Baku over to Grozny when it turned toward Kazakhstan, hundreds of miles across the Caspian Sea from its intended destination, and crashed while making an attempt to land. There were a total of 29 survivors, according to officials there. According to a readout of the call provided by the press office, the Azerbaijan president told Putin that the plane was subject to, quote, external physical and technical interference, although he also stopped short of blaming Russian air defenses. The readout there coming from the press office did say that the plane had multiple holes in its fuselage and that the occupants had sustained injuries, quote, due to foreign particles penetrating the cabin mid-flight. He did say that a team of international experts had started probing the incident at Azerbaijan's initiative, but provided no details. Earlier in the week, the Azerbaijan Prosecutor General's office confirmed that investigators from Azerbaijan are working in Grozny. On Friday, a U.S. official and a minister in Azerbaijan made separate statements blaming the crash on an external weapon, echoing those made by aviation experts who blame the crash on Russian air defense systems responding to a Ukrainian attack. Again, all of this is still under investigation. You can see the aftermath on your screen. As we get more details here, we'll make sure to bring those to you right here on Live Now from Fox.
In this video, we'll explore different scenarios of how this plane crash might have occurred, while the Russian reported that it was struck by a bird, which could have caused engine failure. However, there are also several other reports suggesting that the plane was hit by a Russian Panzer missile system supported by video evidence, all in the video ahead. Azerbaijan Airlines Flight J28243 was en route from the Azerbaijani capital, Baku, to Grozny, the capital of the Chechen Republic in Russia, when it encountered a critical situation mid-flight. The aircraft was forced to make an emergency landing approximately 3 kilometers, which is around 1.8 miles away from Aktau, a city located on the eastern shore of the Caspian Sea in Kazakhstan. The incident resulted in the plane crashing on the opposite shore of the Caspian Sea, after what was described as an emergency maneuver. The nearest Russian airport along the plane's intended flight path, located in Makhachkala, the capital of Dagestan. The Embraer E-Jet family is a narrow-body, short to medium-range, twin-engine jet airliners with 114 seats designed and produced by Brazilian aerospace manufacturer Embraer. Let's take a look at 2 scenarios of what happened to this plane crash. In scenario 1, the Russian authorities claim that the plane was struck by a bird. This alleged bird strike caused an engine explosion which severely damaged the plane's hydraulic systems. The loss of hydraulic fluid rendered the aircraft unable to maintain altitude, resulting in a steep descent and ultimately leading to the crash. In scenario 2, we have a detailed timeline. At 10:43 a.m. Kazakh time, which is 5:43 GMT, Russia's Rostov Air Traffic Control Center received a signal indicating that the crew had decided to divert the flight to Aktau due to adverse weather conditions in Baku and Makhachkala, a city in Russia's Dagestan region. At 10:53 a.m., the Rostov flight director informed Akto's flight manager that an oxygen tank in the passenger cabin had exploded. This explosion reportedly caused passengers to lose consciousness, prompting the crew to request immediate medical assistance upon landing. Emergency teams were swiftly mobilized at Akta Airport in preparation for the aircraft's arrival. At 11:02 a.m., the pilots made contact with Akta Airport's air traffic control tower. Despite their efforts, the crew faced significant challenges during their descent. They attempted to land twice but were unable to maintain altitude or stabilize the aircraft. Tragically, at 11:28 a.m., contact with the crew was lost, and moments later, the plane crashed to the ground. This means the plane was hit between 10:30 to 10:53 a.m. Kazakh time by the Russian anti-air defense system. The Panzer Air Defense System's radar scans the surrounding airspace, continuously detecting and identifying potential threats, such as this Embraer E-Jet. Once a target is identified, the system initiates tracking using its integrated radar and optical sensors. These components work together to calculate the target's trajectory, speed, and other critical engagement parameters necessary for interception. Based on the target's range, speed, and altitude, the Panzer system determines the most effective response, whether to launch a missile or engage with its high-speed autocannons. In this scenario, the plane is flying at a significantly higher altitude, rendering the cannons ineffective. Consequently, the system opts to deploy a missile as the optimal weapon for engagement. The missile is launched vertically from its sealed canister. It uses its advanced onboard guidance system to navigate with precision towards the designated target. As the missile approaches, its onboard sensors continue to track the civilian aircraft, which in this case is tragically identified as an Azerbaijani civilian aircraft. The missile carries a 25-kilogram high-explosive warhead. Upon reaching the target, the warhead detonates, releasing an intense explosion. The explosion occurs near the side of the aircraft, causing catastrophic damage to its tail section. The resultant shrapnel penetrates the fuselage, inflicting severe internal structural damage. This devastating impact destabilizes the aircraft, leading to an uncontrollable descent. The severely damaged plane crashes near Akta Airport, resulting in a tragic loss of life and a devastating outcome for all those on board. This Russian Panzer has been very successful in Ukraine in taking out drones that resemble Cessna aircraft. The Panzer is equipped with two armaments, a missile system and a 30mm gun. This is the UG-22 drone that can carry 82mm mortar rounds that the Russian mistook for the Azerbaijani plane. When this Cessna-like drone enters Russian territory, the Panzer's radar tracks it and selects the missile option to launch and destroy the drone as it flies at a very high altitude. The Panzer missile and gun system crews are responsible for monitoring and securing the airspace in designated areas, typically a few kilometers from populated regions, to ensure the safety of civilians. Once a target is detected, the Panzer system tracks and destroys it at a range of up to 20 kilometers before relocating. Since the beginning of the operation, Russian Panzer missile defense systems have reportedly destroyed more than 400 drones and numerous military aircraft. As we examine the damage caused by the air defense missile strike on the Embraer 190, it's important to note that the tail section of the aircraft was found upside down in the field. This perspective allows us to observe the left side of the vertical fin and the left side of the rudder, both of which are constructed using composite materials. Visible on the left side of the aircraft are the entry wounds caused by the missile's shrapnel. Correspondingly, exit wounds can be observed on the right side of the vertical fin and rudder, indicating the trajectory of the shrapnel as it passed through the structure. These missiles are equipped with proximity fuses, designed to detonate the warhead when the missile is near its target. Upon detonation, the warhead releases a barrage of shrapnel that penetrates the side of the aircraft. This type of damage is particularly devastating as the shrapnel often severs critical hydraulic lines and other essential systems. Here we can clearly see the shrapnel impact on the left side of the vertical fin, where it entered the aircraft, causing catastrophic damage that likely contributed to the loss of control. Here you can see the damage penetrating the right portion of the rudder. This is the exit hole of the shrapnels, where the damage departed from the composite structure of the rudder. Next, he moves into the vertical fin portion, and here you can clearly see the shrapnel exiting through the aluminum structure of the vertical fin. Now you're looking at the top of the fuselage, right here where his hand is positioned. This area is on the right side of the vertical fin, showing how the shrapnel tore straight through it. We make original videos from scratch, so please do subscribe and hit the notification bell for more videos.
We have some breaking news just into CNN. CNN has just confirmed that Jimmy Carter, the 39th president of the United States, has died at the age of 100. CNN's Wolf Blitzer has a look back now at President Carter's extraordinary life and career.
We just want the truth again.
Jimmy Carter was elected president barely 2 years after the law-breaking and cover-ups of the Watergate scandal forced President Richard Nixon to resign. His candor seemed like a breath of fresh air.
There's a fear that our best years are behind us. But I say to you that our nation's best is still ahead.
James Earl Carter was born on October 1st, 1924. His father ran an agricultural supply store in Plains, Georgia. His mother was a nurse. He was smart enough and tough enough to receive an appointment to the U.S. Naval Academy. Just after graduation in 1946, he married Rosalind Smith. His naval career took him from battleships to the new nuclear submarine program, but when his father died in 1953, he left the military and returned to Georgia, where he spent the next 2 decades running the family peanut farm business and slowly and steadily beginning a political career that saw him elected governor of Georgia in 1970.
To use an old 1950s term, if there ever was a classic example of an inner-directed man, you know, Jimmy Carter's it.
His close friend and associate was Press Secretary Jody Powell, who died in 2009.
He enjoyed people, and he enjoyed talking to people. I think he enjoyed those early days of campaigns when there was much more personal interaction with the voters than he did the latter stages when it was a series of set-piece speeches and large crowds.
My name is Jimmy Carter, and I'm running for president.
In 1976, the former Georgia governor went from being Jimmy Who to the White House. Not everyone in Washington was happy to see him.
Washington, even more than New York, is the snobbiest city in America. And Carter and the Georgians were treated like dirt, condescendingly, and with hostility. If he had a fault, it was that he matched Washington's hostility with his own.
Early on, Carter was accused of presidential micromanaging, of excessive attention to detail.
At his best, Jimmy Carter mastered a subject and then led, sometimes very effectively, because of his mastery of its details.
That mastery of details enabled Carter to negotiate the Camp David peace accords, a deal between Egypt and Israel that led to a peace treaty ending decades of war between their countries. His most difficult presidential days came after Iranian militants took dozens of Americans hostage in Tehran in late 1979. They were held for 444 days, and 8 U.S. servicemen died after President Carter ordered an elaborate rescue attempt that failed. The Iran hostage crisis was only one of the challenges that confronted President Carter.
We must face the fact that the energy shortage is permanent.
During Carter's term, Americans endured a sharp, steady increase in oil and gasoline prices, which forced everything to cost more. To some, Carter's stark comments began to sound like moralizing.
The erosion of our confidence in the future is threatening to destroy the social and the political fabric of America.
In 1980, Carter faced Republican challenger Ronald Reagan, who exuded sunny optimism and asked voters a simple question.
Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?
Jimmy Carter lost the election, but not his resolve to make a difference. He and Rosalind founded the Carter Center in part to promote peace, democracy, human rights, as well as economic and social development all over the world. Carter monitored elections for fairness. He went to North Korea and Cuba and met with leaders usually shunned by the U.S., including representatives of Hamas, the Palestinian organization both the U.S. and Israel have branded as terrorists.
This is a man who has a really unique commitment to public service. It really is a calling with him.
In autumn of 2002, Carter was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, the culmination of an incredible career as a world leader and as a citizen.
I'm delighted and humbled and very grateful that the Nobel Peace Prize Committee has given me this recognition.
He still wasn't done. Carter remained active into his 90s, traveling, writing books, building Habitat for Humanity homes, and to the discomfort of his successors, speaking out on the issues of the day. He criticized Bill Clinton's affair with Monica Lewinsky, called George W. Bush's international policy, quote, the worst in history.
But from your definition, you believe the United States, under this administration, has used torture.
I don't think it. I know it, certainly.
He also took on President Donald Trump.
Does America want kind of a jerk as president?
Apparently, from his recent elections, I never knew it before.
Carter survived a cancer scare in 2015 and kept going.
Didn't find any cancer at all.
Go ahead, pull it.
When he attended Georgia.
It's interesting because, when he came in, he's the Georgia guy and he's dirty and society didn't like him. And now he's highfalutin elite society and he doesn't like Donald Trump. That was pretty cute, that last clip. All right. So Jimmy Carter, he was a president. I was a young kid. He was right after Ford, if I remember correctly. And over here in my brain model, I do have a little bit modeled about James Earl Carter. His predecessor, by the way, Gerald Ford, is the first king to be president because his name was Leslie Lynch King III, and then he was adopted, and then his name became Gerald Ford. He's also a 33rd degree Mason. So after Jerry Ford steps in, they get some, cover-ups going on. They do whatever they have to do after Nixon to like shine and polish everything. Nelson Rockefeller was vice president. And then Jimmy Carter comes on the scene almost as the opposing force, the equal and opposing force. And it's very, very interesting, the story that brings James Earl Carter to the presidency, because he was a protege of David Rockefeller, not Nelson Rockefeller, who was in the White House already. David Rockefeller, the other brother, who's making the next president of these United States. So it's interesting. There's a whole bunch of history that goes along, but it was Zbigniew Brzezinski and David Rockefeller who founded the Trilateral Commission. And that Trilateral Commission had great deal of influence in Carter's administration, almost the entire cabinet, trilateral members. What is that? That is a Rockefeller, Brzezinski, the great game, grand chessboard type of agency for influencing Asia. That's what trilateral is. So we've got the Trilateral Commission, and they want to pick a guy for the White House. So they take Georgia Governor Jimmy Carter. So let's go over to the Wikipedia. Let's click that open. Let's go over here to the browser, and we'll go, if I was talking there like Bob Ross, there was a 70-hour Bob Ross-a-thon last weekend that I started probably right after Grand Theft World ended. I was like, oh, he's painting. I have, some Bob Ross paintings. But that's not the topic of this conversation. Jimmy Carter, he was president for a while. You can read all about the things that went on. But what you're not going to read in this early life or education or naval career or any of what they just told you on CNN, right? That was like, here's the guy's whole life. What you're about to find out is not in either of these stories. So let's cut to the chase. First off, Jimmy Carter, he did some smart things. He wrote this book, Palestine Peace, Not Apartheid. Even though he's a president of the United States, I guess he wasn't bought off by AIPAC and the Israel lobby enough, because this was a book he printed in the 20th century. And before I take on the next book in the history of how Jimmy Carter came to power, I want to show you a couple other books so I can set the stage. Back in the 1950s, there was this book, The Power Elite by C. Wright Mills. And this is published by the conspiracy theory house known as Oxford University Press, 1956. The Power Elite talks about they, them, those who are in not the meritocracy, but the oligarchy. So this is not conspiratorial. This is how they manage society. You could also read Edward Bernays' Propaganda, Walter Lippmann's Public Opinion, how they shape the minds of the public. And these are the people who do the shaping of the public. But maybe that doesn't meet your criteria for credibility. So let's go to somebody from Kissinger Associates. His name's David Rothkopf. He wrote this book called Superclass, The Global Power Elite. What was this book called? The Power Elite. The global power elite and the world they are making. They've got your world on their keychain. They're like, whoop, it's ours. Now, Rothkopf, he's an interesting character. Carnegie International Foundation, Kissinger Associates. He's got Larry Summers and some other globalists writing. You know, it's a very interesting book, and I could go into all the quotes and the things that they say about us, we the people, but I got to put a couple more sources on the record for you so you'll understand, or at least have a chance of convincing a friend or family member to understand for themselves. Plutocrats, the rise of the new global super rich, and the fall of everyone else. Everyone else has cars, right? And these people have jet. You see the difference? Now, this is Chrystia Freeland. You might remember her from the COVID Canada scenario series back in the day. She was very much a totalitarian, authoritarian in that context, and she considers herself part of the plutocrat class. And then a more contemporaneous resource, we have the Deep State Encyclopedia by Really Graceful, and we do have a video by Grace later tonight in the episode on the Elon Musk Vivek situation. But now for the book about Carter. It's called With No Apologies, The Personal and Political Memoirs of United States Senator Barry M. Goldwater. Now, I have several copies of this book. It is a rare piece of evidence. If you can acquire even one that's a little beaten up, this is the one I highlighted all up, not the one that's autographed. And in here, there's 3 main chapters that pertain to Jimmy Carter, and they would be chapters 32, 33, and 34. So I'll just give you a couple selections, because chapter 32 has to do with Jerry Ford, the non-elected president, and Governor Nelson Rockefeller of New York. But that's not why we're here. We want to know about this trilateral commission and they, them, those who can easily be named, who pick our presidents up until recently, it seems. So let's go and zoom in here. This is chapter 33, titled The Non-Elected Rulers. Until the First World War, we were successful in remaining aloof from Europe's quarrels. In the community of nations, we are more often debtor than creditor. Our population expanded, our economic power increased. Under the free enterprise system, industry expanded. After World War I, we could no longer remain isolationists. The changing times required us to become a participant in the world community of nations. Scholars turned their attention to foreign affairs. What was to become of the American Council on Foreign Relations? What was to become? The American Council on Foreign Relations was organized in Paris in 1919 under the sponsorship of Colonel Edward Mandell House, who had exerted much power in the Wilson administration. So he's telling you after World War I, the globalists start to infiltrate and take over the country. He goes through the CFR. He goes through the Rockefeller family. And now this is a former senator, and his memoir is called with no apologies. He's telling you in an unabashed way, speaking with much parrhesia, this is how the country ran, at least in the 1970s. The Rockefeller Foundation agreed to finance the operation of this plan. From that day forward, the Council on Foreign Relations has placed its members in policymaking positions with federal government, not limited to the State Department. Since 1944, every American Secretary of State, with the exception of James F. Burns, has been a member of the CFR. Almost without exception, the members of the CFR are united by a congeniality of birth, economic status, and educational background. A number of writers disturbed by the influential role of this organization has played in determining foreign policy has concluded that the Council on Foreign Relations and its members are an active part of the communist conspiracy for world domination. I don't know if you heard anything about communism lately. I don't think it's a thing anymore. It's probably not relevant. Going down to Rear Admiral Chester Ward, who asserts the same, and then you get over to the Kissinger part. Henry Kissinger, CFR member and Nelson Rockefeller's protege, was in charge of foreign policy. When Jimmy Carter was elected, Kissinger was replaced by Zbigniew Brzezinski, CFR member and David Rockefeller's protege. I think that about sums it up, but just in case you don't get the point, let's actually read a little bit more. So you got Governor Rockefeller and then David Rockefeller's Trilateral Commission with Zbigniew Brzezinski bringing you Jimmy Carter. And then the banks and everybody control that vast wealth through the peanut farmer guy who acts like he doesn't get along with these people when they're how he, came to power in the first place. So in the next chapter, after this is all explained, and he talks about the powerful European banker Anselm Rothschild once said, "Give me the power to issue a nation's money and I do not care who makes the laws." I mean, is this a senator or is this a conspiracy theorist writing this book? This is fascinating U.S. history. I wonder if this is taught in an American university anywhere on this planet. And he concludes chapter 33, because we're about to get to chapter 34, Jimmy Who? But we're about to conclude. We're on page 284. This is Goldwater, Senator Goldwater, writing in his memoirs. In my view, the Trilateral Commission represents a skillful, coordinated effort to seize control and consolidate the four centers of power: political, monetary, intellectual, and ecclesiastical. All this is to be done in the interest of creating a more peaceful, more productive world community. Throughout my public life and in these pages, I have refrained from judging other men's motives. I have no such hesitancy about judging their wisdom and the results of the actions taken. And he goes on to describe how Trilateral Commission control was not such a good thing for American freedom, and it brought us the Reagan years and H.W. Bush and Bill Clinton and all the rest, because it's all part of the same big Cecil Rhodes' last will and testament type of plan. But if we get to chapter 34, we get this guy, Jimmy Who. The Trilateral Commission is a modern Praetorian Guard. David Rockefeller and Zbigniew Brzezinski found Jimmy Carter to be their ideal candidate. They helped him win the nomination and the presidency. To accomplish this purpose, they mobilized the money power of the Wall Street bankers, the intellectual influence of the academic community, which is subservient to the wealth of the great tax-free foundations, and the media controllers represented in the membership of CFR and Trilateral Commission. So for years and years and years and years, people were like, CFR, that's conspiracy theory. Trilateral Commission, they have no influence. Well, if you flip to page 292, you can read the part where 5 of his 12 cabinet members and all 19 of his top advisors are trilateral members. And then he studiously goes through and names them all. And, there's nothing to see there. There's nothing to see there. Barry Goldwater is just a crank. He's upset he didn't win for president and he wrote this book. Maybe, maybe. But Jimmy Carter was an agent of Wall Street. The same Wall Street who funded Hitler, the same Wall Street that funded the mass murder of the Bolshevik Revolution. So, if Hitler's bad and mass revolution murder like the Bolsheviks did was bad, aren't the people who fund those things kind of worse, right? Multi-generational group of people who funded Hitler, and got away with it, and then rose to power in this country, got away with killing Kennedy, got away with Nixon, who tried to maybe ruffle some feathers, and they took him out, put their guys back in place, rolled it with Jimmy Carter, rolled it further with Reagan and H.W. Bush, brought in a Rhodes Scholar in the form of Clinton, put Bush's kid in so he could have, residency over 9/11 while his dad was at the White House. He's sleeping in Florida doing some upside down book reading down in some Florida school that morning. There's a lot of continuity to these stories. And Jimmy Carter's role in Operation Cyclone, where Zbigniew Brzezinski brings in a guy named Osama bin Laden to lead the Mujahideen against the Soviets. I mean, look, the NATO in the West still has a grind with the Soviets. That's Russia today with Putin. These themes of history that you're seeing unfolding, threats of nuclear war, all these things that are unfolding each week, they have threads in history. And if you don't understand what the angle was back then, you might be very misled and say, oh, that Jimmy Carter, he looked like a nice guy. Wonderful president, did wonderful things. That's just, he was a mask for the bankers. That was his role, and he did it right up till the end. Otherwise, he wouldn't have lived to be 100, just like David Rockefeller also lived to be about 100. And I think Heinz Kissinger probably made it to around 100 too. I guess this reality rewards those type of people in some way. I don't know.
Yeah, that's really interesting stuff. Now, so I have a question.
Only the good die young. Is that the Billy Joel song?
Yeah, exactly. Well, great presentation. So, it's really interesting. So Gerald Ford becomes president, right? And then Nelson Rockefeller is the vice president. So, you would assume that Nelson Rockefeller would be like the most likely to then assume the position or be the candidate, right? So my question is was there beef or like rivalry between Nelson Rockefeller and David Rockefeller? Like, what was that relationship like?
No, they got along. Actually, I bought this poster years ago. Rockefeller ran for president right after they killed Kennedy.
Yeah.
So in 64, he's like, hey, elect me. And they're like, no, thank you. We got LBJ. So he didn't get to be president. He gets in as vice president only after they impeach Nixon, right? So he's not elected. He didn't have to campaign. They just slide him in, right? Nelson dies at a young age, like in his 50s, with his head between his secretary's legs, apparently. So, he's out there having some fun. And David outlived him by like 50 years. So they were like equal and opposing sides, if you will. Like they're the vice that squeezes, right? Nelson groomed Henry Kissinger. David grooms Brzezinski. Kissinger and Brzezinski's foreign policy have driven America for like the last 60 years. And so the Twin Towers were nicknamed David and Nelson because it's the Rockefellers that brought this whole project under the guise of the Bridge and Tunnel Authority or whatever they concocted as their proxy to be like, we don't own all the bridges and tunnels. So they're like, we have this thing that's like, oh, it's not us. But like even the World Trade Center was owned by New York Transit Authority or something like that, and then sold to Silverstein. So there was all this real estate swapping around back then. And those were like their stage pieces, those two towers. So if they parlayed building those towers to someday take away those towers and gain a whole bunch of power, you could think of them as like theater stage set pieces that were, economically feasible for 30 years, but no longer going to be feasible. They had no feasible way to bring those buildings down legally with the insurance and the asbestos, and it never could be done. To put a building up like that, to be approved, wouldn't you have to have like some way to bring it down? Are you allowed to put stuff up that doesn't come down? So like if they had a plan to like make it disappear in the future and that was built into it, that would also be an interesting scenario, which you can't put past people because I could pull David Rockefeller's memoirs where he says, some people say me and my family are internationalists. And he's like, I stand accused. I admit to it and proud of it. Page 408 or something like that, 508.
I think I first learned about that on this show. I was like, come on, really? Like they're telling you? It's right. Like even like when you were talking about a minute ago, like the titles of the books where it's like the power elite, and they're like, oh, there's no class of power elites. It's like, you ever see that video on YouTube? It's put out by the World Government Summit, and I have a screenshot of it right here. I'll slip it in the chat. It's so funny because it's like the gaslighting of it all, where it's like it talks about how so it's a video by the World Government Summit, and the title of the video is "Are we ready for a new world order?" And there's a fact check on it that says the New World Order is a conspiracy that hypothesizes about a secret emerging world government. And it's like, bro, it's the World Government Summit. They're talking about, are you ready for a new world order? It's so funny, just the gas.
Are you ready for some Rockefeller memoirs? Let me
There you
zoom
go.
out just a bit. All right. So this is a real thing. I have the hardcover and the soft cover. The pages are the numbered the same. So there's a whole bunch of good pages in this book. But the one we're looking for is under the chapter Proud Internationalist, chapter 27. This is page 404. And the quote I'm going to give you here is from page 405. This is David Rockefeller in 2001 speaking about he and his family. Let's go like this. Under the heading of populist paranoia. For more than a century, ideological extremists at either end of the political spectrum have seized upon well-publicized incidents such as my encounter with Castro to attack the Rockefeller family for the inordinate influence they claim we wield over American political and economic institutions. First off, bro, you guys founded the Royal Institute of International Affairs in like 1919, and then the Council on Foreign Relations in 1921. CFR took over our statecraft and state policy, put presidents in cabinet, yeah. And then you controlled the medical establishment. Rockefeller Medicine Men, E. Richard Brown, 1976 was the reference. So you do have it. You do have some untoward kind of influence over society. He writes, some even believe we are part of a secret cabal working against the best interests of the United States, characterizing my family and me as internationalists, and of conspiring with others around the world to build a more integrated global political and economic structure. One world, if you will. If that's the charge, I stand guilty, and I am proud of it. There's a reference for it.
Working against the best interest of the United States, which could be argued that is like what the CFR is all about.
That's what the Reese Committee was. The Reese Committee in 1954, and they pulled up in the history blueprint because we are all about the references. If you don't have the references, you can't understand and you can't convey it to other people. Reese Committee, boom, brain. Reese Committee. Talked about in hour 3 of the Ultimate History Lesson with John Taylor Gatto. The Dodd Report on Foundations and Their Influence is something that came out of the congressional investigation into which, which nonprofit foundations. You had the Ford Foundation, the Carnegie Foundation, and the Rockefeller Foundation were specifically named in the 50s of engaging in un-American activities to merge the American way of life with communism, which is what Barry Goldwater said in the 70s and David Rockefeller admitted to in 2001. So this is just history. You can learn more about it and how big oil conquered the world by Corbett. He touches on this. You could learn it from the Ultimate History Lesson with John Taylor Gatto, and a whole bunch more you could learn with that. So there's a variety of places you could not be ignorant about such things. But, it starts with reading the books that they wrote and what did they say about the thing. I don't have to be creative or colorful. It's like what they wrote is plenty colorful. There's a group of people, they have an agenda. They've been getting it done for over a century. And it's about time, if we, the people, want to have freedom in our lives in the future, to recognize that which exists and mitigate its ill effects and insulate ourselves from it continuing down our path in life.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Take a little bit of time.
Everyone's doing some kind of self-help these days, and you can find a million self-help courses out there. Most other courses out there are hosting lectures, they're hosting videos, they're maybe even doing Q&As, and these are great starting points to encourage learning. But at Autonomy, we believe that hands-on practice is the best way to really lock in what we're learning. There's no better way to gain confidence and mastery than through action. After each lecture, we practice the concepts we've learned with other students, giving and receiving feedback in a non-judgmental environment. The result is mastery of concepts like entrepreneurship, ethical sales, and self-reliance in an environment that directly translates to the real world. Plus, you make connections with other like-minded individuals who are learning right alongside you, and you have a lifetime membership in the community. The Autonomy course with Richard Grove equips you with confidence, competence, and courage in a world filled with confusion and noise. You can learn more at getautonomy.info. We'll see you there.
What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions and we can get into the show and we can share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man. No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man. Come